This is juvenile waiver in a nutshell. Now, juvenile waiver is the process of taking children who have been accused of behavior that would be a crime if they were an adult, charging them with an act of delinquency in the juvenile court, and then transferring them over to adult court, where they get prosecuted as an adult in a public forum. It's not confidential anymore, it's public. And the outcome is much more severe. The rules are much different. They can go to jail for significant periods of time, years and years longer than they would if they were still in the juvenile system. And of course, as you know, the juvenile system is designed to rehabilitate. The focus in the adult system is more on punishment. So the stakes are much higher in the adult court. Now, in order to send a child from the juvenile division over to the adult division in New Jersey, there are certain rules that apply, and we call that waiver law. Waiver law. Now, the decision to treat a child as an adult is based upon the prosecutor's discretion. There are 21 county prosecutors. They have staff, lawyers who work there and make decisions about who should or shouldn't be treated more harshly and more punitively by the adult system. The prosecutor has 60 days to file this waiver application. It only applies to children 15 years and older. They can be waived over to adult court. Anybody less than 15 has to stay in the juvenile court. By the way, this changed very recently. Before, kids as young as 14 could go over to adult court, depending upon certain aspects of the allegations and their rehabilitative propensity. In any event, the rule now is 15 years and older can be waived over to adult court. Interestingly, if a child is charged with an offense that could result in waiver, and they go over to adult court, and after their case has ended, they either were the subject of a plea bargain where they pled guilty to an offense, or they went through a trial. If after the trial or the plea bargain, the child has not been convicted of a waivable offense, then they go back to the juvenile court. What do I mean by that? Well, there are target offenses that apply in order to get a child waived. Obviously, if a child is accused of criminal mischief, spray painting a stop sign, you're not going to send them to adult court, nor does the law allow that. It's for serious offenses against people generally, armed robbery, murder, and other target offenses. You have to be accused of one of these serious offenses in order to get waived over to the adult court. Well, let's say you're charged with an armed robbery and you're 15 years old. You did a carjacking, you pointed a gun at someone, you took their money, you terrorized them, and you threatened to kill them. Well, when you go to adult court, assuming you're waived over, if the jury finds you not guilty of the armed robbery, but guilty of a less serious offense called theft from the person, which is taking someone's property without violence, let's say that that's the verdict. Well, since the target offense, robbery, resulted in a dismissal by the jury, and the only offense left is the theft from the person, which would not have gotten you waived over in the first place. If the child was simply charged with theft from the person, the prosecutor could never waive them over. So if the robbery was dismissed and all that was left was the theft from the person, the child goes back to juvenile court. So that's an aspect of the waiver law that benefits the juveniles so that it minimizes the potential for them to wind up in the adult court. The factors that the prosecutor has to evaluate in making the decision include, of course, the nature and circumstances of the offense, the age and maturity of the kid, the degree of his involvement, his culpability, how responsible he is. Was he a helper or was he the prime guy? any prior history of delinquency and what kind of sentences he got, how sophisticated was the robbery or the crime, if the child is eligible for special ed or has any psychological issues or any specific social issues, whether the child was ever involved with DIFUS or other child welfare, mental health history, substance abuse, any emotional instability. All of these factors have to be weighed by the prosecutor, and there has to be a written statement of reasons that accompany the waiver motion. Ultimately, the judge makes a decision, but the prosecutor has to be detailed and specific for this child. So the prosecutor has to have a child 15 or older. She has to file a detailed explanation of why she wants this child sent over to the adult court for disposition. And lastly, she has to show probable cause. And that's usually not too hard to demonstrate, as long as there are police reports and there's some evidence that the child was involved in a very serious offense. The prosecutor can usually demonstrate probable cause. So that's it. 15 and over. A statement of reasons that is documented, written, and shared with the judge, and a showing of probable cause. Those are the three elements of a juvenile waiver application before the juvenile judge. Of course, at the end, after review and listening to all the parties, the prosecution, the defense lawyer, and sometimes even experts through the use of reports, because the defense can submit materials and information about the child's history, about the child's mental health, and all the factors that the prosecutor has to evaluate. After the judge reviews all the information from all sides, she will make a decision as to whether this child will be transferred to the adult court for criminal prosecution.